The first time I heard that the cross is the dividing line was a sermon by my husband. There was a few sermons that he preached that just so changed my way of thinking and my way of life. Man, I would suggest you go on his Bible school and just do it, because when someone ministers out of the Spirit and the purposes of God, then it's so different. Everybody around Quibus was always saying, how does he do that? How does he do that? How does he work finances? How does he do that? And I realized there's only one answer to all of that. He stepped out of existing and he stepped into the purposes of God and he ministered from that realm. Guys, it's our time to understand the cross is the dividing line. I'm going to give you a chart and run you through how the cross is actually the dividing line. So when the tree of knowledge of good and evil was a tree that had two arms, a knowledge of good and evil. Remember, when Jesus was crucified, there was two people crucified next to him. The one was in the destruction, and the one, he said, I'll see you in paradise. And this is where God brought good and evil together again. Because in the Old Testament, trees are peoples. In the New Testament, you are not a planting of the Lord, you are engrafted. I know David was a planting of the Lord, but Jesus is that planting. He's the son of David. We are the branches, because you know why? The roots are secured at the river, it won't move. Because if you do it by yourself, you're going to move again. And we've got to check out and see that we are in Christ. In the New Testament, you can be only in Christ. In the garden was the tree of life. Isaiah says the trees are all chopped down, and only one branch comes out of the stem of Jesse. Branch is Jesus of Nazareth, the meaning of branch. He says the Spirit of God is on him, Spirit of wisdom, understanding, counsel, and might, knowledge, and the fear of the Lord. So what happened at the cross? This tree of life was nailed to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And what happened? Out comes water and blood from his side. This is what Revelation 22 says. Out of the throne and out of the Lamb comes the river. And on both sides was the tree of life. Not trees as in many, or in two, or in three. No, one tree of life. So I went and I looked at the word tree in Genesis. The tree of life means flowing. So what happened in Genesis, the river came out of the tree and it branched in 4 rivers. Now in Revelation, out of the throne and out of the Lamb was the crucified Christ. This is where it came. He made everything new. You see, if we still wait for that to come, we'll never step up, but we have to understand realms too. So out of the throne comes the river, and it comes in 4 stages. Ezekiel saw it, ankle deep, knee deep, thigh deep, shoulder deep. We are back in the garden, and Jesus is the tree of life, and he wants us to grow because he's the seed planted in our hearts. First the ear, then the blade, and then the full harvest. Guys, we need to understand the spirit realm in the word, and we need to divide the times to understand the purposes of God. So the cross is also the dividing line between night and day. Because Jesus came and said, the people that sat in darkness saw a great light. And out of the womb of the morning comes the day. The time Christ was here is the womb of the morning. For 40 years, they didn't receive him. And now the daughter of Zion brought forth the Christ, because the law brought forth the body, but the body brought forth the daughter of Zion. Those were the people that fled Jerusalem when God warned them to flee, and they became the church. And this is why we have the book of Revelation written. Is this not awesome? So he says, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm the God of the living, not of the dead. Matthew 32:22. And now he says in Romans 14, he says, I'm the God of the living and the dead. That makes what a big separation for the realm of the dead. Before the cross, we read about Sheol, and in the New Testament, it's called Hades. It's the pit. It's where people have gone back to the dust, and they were sitting in prison. But Jesus came and he said, I've come to release the prisoners. I've come to bring light. I've come to open the eyes of the blind. I've come, let the deaf can hear, and let the lame can walk. So Israel, if they want to continue, it is because they are willingly ignorant. And 2 Peter 3 tells us about this. He says, these people are willingly ignorant that there was a flood and there's a second world that is now reserved unto fire. So the day of ignorance, God has seen over. But now we have to be engrafted. And if we could be engrafted, so can they be engrafted. Romans 11. Now, before the cross, he says the first man, Adam, was a living soul. The second man became a quickening spirit. So Christ was the body prepared in the natural beastly realm of humanity. But he became a quickening spirit when he received the Spirit. The heavens opened up and God came and indwelt man. He became a quickening spirit, and that spirit raised him from the dead. And that same spirit is now within us. And 2 Corinthians 1 verse 22 says, he has sealed us with the Spirit as a guarantee. So we need to understand that you cannot be in Adam. Adam was the first man. When Jesus came down after receiving the kingdom, he blew over the people and said, receive the Spirit. That's not the infilling of the Spirit. It's the birth of the second generation man. Oh my word. We are new creatures. It's a different species of man after the cross than before the cross. You cannot be in Adam. But he says in 1 Corinthians 15 that, how be it, the first is natural and the second is spiritual. That's why you need to be born again. But you cannot be in Adam. You're either natural or you spiritual, but you are still in the fallen creation. And God has now given us the seal of the Spirit. In other words, he's given it back into our hands, and he is sitting next to the Father, united with the Father, waiting for the manifestation of the sons on this earth. Because he says he has made us to be kings and priests. And then he says in Revelation 5, kings to rule and reign on this earth. We have to get that before the cross, it was generations, 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 cycles. After the cross, it's one generation, the chosen generation. So he says, days and nights will be for times and seasons. Let's look at seasons. Seasons only started in Noah. When Noah came out the ark, he first let a raven go, then a dove, and then a dove. A raven and two doves. These are the seasons. Noah himself became the raven because he didn't cherish the covenant God gave him. He became drunk. He became a husbandman. He drank of the vineyard he planted. And he revealed his nakedness, and he resembles the raven. Then Israel was the dove. And God said to them that they will be a kingdom of priests. But there's a point where they came, they said, we want a king. And they became the dove that left, and only the dung stayed behind. But when Jesus came, oh my word, the dove found a landing. These are the 3 seasons that came after the flood. Now, all the prophets talk about, and it started in Moses. He says, God will give rain in the due season. The due season is the season after the cross. And Peter speaks about the season. When they said, what is this? He said, this is that Joel spoke about. He says, fear not, O land, I will give you the former rain moderately, and the former and the latter in one. So after the cross, we're back into the garden. It's a season of growing. It's a season of God has chosen. It is a season of one generation, the Christ generation. It is a season where you can grow only if the seed is in your heart, you engrafted in Him. A blade, a ear, and then the full harvest. So when the harvest comes, He says, I will give you the former and the latter in one. Guys, I hear the sound of abundance of rain. What's going on earth? It's preparing for the big rain. With Noah, it was the most terrible, terrible, terrible time on the earth. And when Noah was born, his father said, this man will rid us from the curse of the earth. So it was the most terrible time. And what happened is the fountains of the deep and the heavens opened up in one day. And the same is going to happen there, because the fountain is now inside of us. And heaven and earth is going to come back in full unity in one day. But the deposit of that is planted right in our hearts. And that makes us new creatures. The old things have passed away. The new has come. Guys, if we can understand the purpose of God in our life and in our generation because of time, I think we are the luckiest generation ever, because we can look back and we can understand, because as time goes, revelation grows. We are in a place where the kingdom is restored. Before the cross, the kingdom was lost. But He came to seek and save that which was lost. It was the kingdom. The pit was emptied. When Jesus died, the night He died, He put an apron on and He started washing their feet. And just before that, He also said, shake off the dust. We are not going back to dust. We are not destined for the pit. Even if we die, we will be resurrected. In the Old Testament, you have to find grace. In the New, grace finds you. In the Old Testament, you can only be a priest. In the New, you are a king and a priest. Guys, it's time that we understand the cross is the dividing line that brought heaven back to earth, and Jesus is that door. He is the way, the truth, and the life.